It's time once again to take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards and say whether they're good in the Pauper format or not. It is common knowledge. Let's get started with our first card. It is Dross Forge Bridge. I think actually, maybe we haven't done the artifact bridges before. This might be our first time. Maybe. These are good. These are damn good. These potentially should. There's questions of whether these should be banned in Pauper, or if the Mirrodin artifact land should be banned. Those are just single colors. The Mirrodin ones are single colors, but they enter untapped, and these obviously enter tapped. Dross Force Bridge, artifact land enters tap, and it's indestructible, and it taps for either this one, black or red. But you know the whole 10 cycle is there, so we have all the duels. And these are awesome. These are so good in Pauper because they they fix your mana, which is pretty awesome. And two, they're artifacts, so they work towards artifact synergies or affinity for artifact stuff that you have. These lands are crazy. That's it's wild, some of the stuff that you can do with these lands. The thing that I also really like about these lands is that they're indestructible. And that means that they can't be affected by destroy effects. So your stone rains and things like that your opponent might be using, their Ponza kind of stuff, doesn't work on these. And that's cool. It just keeps these around a little bit more. Artifact hate is really easy in not only Pauper but in Magic in general. So to have these be a little sturdier from that is really cool. But then also, it allows you a ton of other things that you can do, which the biggest one in Pauper probably being using Cleansing Wildfire in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended to be used when it first came out. Let's take a look at Cleansing Wildfire. Wildfire, there we go. You got to put the N in there. That's the problem. Cleansing Wildfire has destroy target land, then search for a basic land, and then draw a card. So I think when Wizards made this card, they're planning on you destroying your opponent's land, or even maybe destroying your own land, and then getting another basic and drawing a card. That's a thing you could do. It's kind of a 2-mana draw one in red. Okay, maybe it color fixes you a little bit in red. That could be something, I guess. But the idea is that you generally be using this on your opponent's lands, get rid of their duels or something, force them to get a basic, and then you draw a card out of the deal. Cool card. Generally a cool card. But when you have an indestructible land, you target the land with this, the destroy doesn't happen, but the rest of the effects do. So you would still go find a basic and put it onto the battlefield. So you're ramping yourself at that point. And you're drawing a card. It's a rampant growth that draws you a card. That's nuts. So that's turned into an entire deck. Jund Wildfire is the one that uses this to its best advantage, I believe. But you also see a bunch of other deck archetypes and deck shells that will use the artifact lands in conjunction with Cleansing Wildfire to be able to get that ramp package going. And usually you want to splash a third color, and that's why Jund Wildfire, green, red, black, is so popular, because you get to use more of the artifact bridges. If you're just 2 colors, then you kind of just use one of the dual lands. You could use other dual lands. It's not Commander. You're not locked into specific colors. But to get the most out of it, it's nice to have 3 colors. Then you can run 12 bridges, right? Yeah, you can run 12 bridges at that point. And then you get a lot of targets for that Cleansing Wildfire to hit, and then you get your ramp and you get your draw, which is very cool. I also really like these lands. I have them in a Dimir blinky bouncy shell, and I use them with Kenku Artificer because I guess we can take a look at Kenku Artificer since we're just looking at cards. Kenku Artificer. So Kenku Artificer, when it enters, you put 3/1/1 counters on a target non-creature artifact. Those lands count. And then that creature or that artifact becomes a 0/0 homunculus with flying. So you just get to turn these things into indestructible flying creatures that are also lands. That's pretty rad. That's pretty rad. And then when you blink the homunculus, you get to do it on more of the lands. That's just really cool. It's a really cool thing to do. I love these bridges so much. I think they are a really important part of Pauper. It would make me really sad if these things got banned out. I think if you were to ban any of the artifact lands, I would probably lean more towards the Mirrodin ones than these, just because I think having the indestructible gives these such a fun usefulness that I would be really sad if we lost some of that deck building potential by getting these out of here. And I think them entering tapped also makes them less of a candidate for banning than the Mirrodin artifact lands. That's just me, though, and I'm biased because I have decks that care about these lands quite a bit. I could see somebody making a pretty strong argument the other way and saying that the Mirrodin land should stay and these lands should go, but maybe you just leave them all in. I think we've dealt with them long enough now that everybody kind of knows to run Artifact Hate or Exile Artifact Hate at this point. We've got enough, dust to dust style effects that I think they're fine. But they are really good. So when it comes to giving these things a score, damn, I think I've got to give them. They're really, really good. I think I'm going to give these. I'm going to give it a 9.2. These are some incredible lands. When you think about dual lands in Pauper, these are the best. I think these are the best. You could argue for Gates, and I think you could make a strong argument for that. I'm trying to think of any other dual lands that you could potentially consider this high. Like not the Outlaws of Thunder Junction desert lands. Like those are good. Those are really good, but they're not nearly as good as these. I think these might just be some of the best lands in the format. They're so good. All right, we got to move on. That took a long time for that first one. This one will be a little faster. Woodland Changeling is 1 and a green for a 2/2 shapeshifter with Changeling, as you might imagine. But that's it. It's a grizzly bear, but it's all creature types. Originally from Lorwyn, and I love this card. I think it's a fun card. It's not very good. Grizzly bears are rarely good. But one with every creature type is at least fun. You could put this in an elf deck. You shouldn't, but you could. We have other changelings that we put in our elves decks. But again, it's just a grizzly bear with every creature type. It's not that great, but it is fun. And we like fun. I'm going to give this thing a 2.3. And I think... No, I'm going to give it like a 2 point. I guess I'll just give it a 2.2 as its power and toughness. But I think that 0.2 is just it having changeling. Because I would think a grizzly bear is basically a 2 on its own. So having every creature type, I guess, bumps it up a couple tenths of a point. All right. Our next card is Rakdos Signet. We have done the Signets before. They are very good. Not necessarily in Pauper, but certainly in Commander. And you see them printed in basically every Commander set, or some of them are printed in every Commander set, depending on how many Commander decks we get. But yeah, they're good. But we just don't really need 2-mana rocks in Pauper, and so we don't really play them in our Pauper decks. But they still continue to be really good Magic cards. But we've done them before. Next up is Kindled Fury. For a single red mana, you get an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. What a normal Magic card. Was this originally from Morningtide? I guess it was, yeah. A lot of Lorwyn stuff going on these days. Today, anyway. So yeah, Kindled Fury is fine. It's fine. Is this like a... Is Sure Strike, is that the same effect, or is Sure Strike a little different? Sure Strike is +3 and First Strike. This is just +1 and First Strike. But this costs half as much. It's fine. I don't know. I don't know really what to tell you here. This is an okay combat trick. First strike is nice. A little power boost to make that first strike even more potent is also nice. But I think we just generally have better cards than this. And I mean, it's a really nice limited piece. I would put this in a limited deck all day long. I would put this in a cube. It's a great nostalgic classic Magic card, but probably doesn't see any real Pauper constructed play. Maybe if you had something that was just spells that target your own guys. And we are seeming to get some of that in Strixhaven, in the new Secrets of Strixhaven. So maybe, but I still think you can probably do better than this for a very focused Pauper deck, a focused constructed Pauper deck. So I think I can give this thing a 3.4. Yeah, 3.4 I think makes sense. Like it's a solid Magic card, but I don't think it's gonna make the cut for your deck. Fledgling Osprey is a single blue mana for a 1/1 bird. This creature has flying as long as it's enchanted. So that's we did we did Merfolk of the Pearl Trident yesterday on the last episode, rather. And that's a 1/1 for 1 that's just vanilla. This is, I guess, technically better than a Merfolk of the Pearl Trident, but only slightly. Having to enchant this thing to get flying is not amazing. I guess it's nice that it gets that bonus, but it's also just a bird that probably should have flying to begin with. I think we have powered out this one. Compare this. Well, compare this to any of the fairies that we have in the Mono Blue Fairies deck. But also another card that gets played in Mono Blue Fairies is the Ilvoy Galeblade, which has flash, it starts with flying. You can pay to sack it to draw a card. That's pretty good. Think about another card that sometimes gets played in the Mono Blue Fairies decks, and that's Harrier Strix. Harrier Strix, another single blue mana, flying. It comes in, you tap a thing. Think of another one that has occasionally been played, or used to be played rather, in Mono Blue Fairies, and that's Network Disruptor. Single blue mana, taps a permanent when it comes into play. Kind of like a Harrier Strix, but a little worse. But it is an artifact. Maybe that matters to you. All of those are insanely better than Fledgling Osprey. So this card's bad. This card is bad. It's better than a Merfolk with the Pearl Trident, but it's still bad. I'm going to give this thing a 1.2. 1.2, and move on to our next card, which is Argivian Phalanx, which is 5 and a white for a 4/4 human core soldier. It has affinity for creatures. That's cool. And it also has vigilance. You know, this seems okay, right? We have plenty of those white weenie go wide decks now that are playing Leonardo, or potentially played the Chocobo, Fat Chocobo. No, not Fat Chocobo. Chocomog. They were playing Chocomog in White Weenie for a bit. Spider-Man was being played in White Weenie for a bit. And this seemingly would fit pretty decently, right? A potentially 1 mana 4/4 with vigilance. Okay, I'm into it. The problem is that we have a slightly better card in this Salt Road Pack Beast that's pretty new. It's same mana cost, 5 and a white. You get a 4/3 instead of a 4/4, so a little worse on that front. It still costs 1 less for each creature you control, so it still has that affinity for creatures idea. But when this guy enters, he draws you a card, and I'm pretty sure I would rather get the card than I would just a vigilance guy. That being said, this is still pretty good. It's getting a nice juicy 4/4, especially if you can get it down to just 1 or 2 mana. It's pretty good. This thing attacks and then can block. I like it. But where do you make the cutoff in a White Weenie deck like that? Salt Road Pack Beast barely gets played in White Weenie, and sometimes doesn't get it played at all. Spider-Man, at this point, the 3/3 with web slinging, has kind of been powered out by Leonardo at this point. Chocomog has been kind of powered out at this point by Leonardo. And so many of the other creatures that you have to play in White Weenie have to be 1 or maybe 2 mana. You get the Rafine's Informant at 2. You play the Inspectors, Novice and Thraben at 1. You're doing your Battle Screeches. Like, how much room do you have for a couple of quote unquote bombs? Leonardo's going to take up a handful of those spots, like at least 2 and maybe 3, potentially even 4. It's a really good card. It is legendary, so you can't play multiples on the table at the same time, but it's such a good card that you want to have it in your hand whenever you can. So that cuts out space for some of these finisher style cards, these bigger bomb guys. And I think we just have better, bigger bombs in our mono white weenie decks. It's kind of rough to say that, because this is legitimately cool. It's a cool card. I wasn't playing Pauper during Dominaria United, but I imagine this probably had a place in White Weenie decks if White Weenie was even a thing back then, and I imagine it was. I bet this was pretty good in those decks for a little while, and now it's just powered out. I'm gonna give this thing a 4. I'm not just gonna give it a 4.4. You know what? That's kind of what it deserves, though. I'm thinking about it, and yeah, you know what? We'll end up giving it a 4.4, which, yes, is its power and toughness, but it's a good card. It's a good card. If Salt Road Pack Beast and Leonardo and Chocomog and Peter and Spider-Man weren't all a thing, I think you could get away with playing 2 or 3 copies in your White Weenie deck, and people wouldn't bat an eye. But we do have those cards. We do have all those cards, which makes something like this a tougher proposition. Nomad's Encore is a single white mana for a 1/1 core Nomad Soldier, and you can pay 0 for the next 1 damage that would be dealt to this creature is dealt to target creature you control instead. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. All the way back from Stronghold, I have a couple copies of this guy. We were just showing the artifact bridges. If you can turn those bridges into creatures, then this guy can funnel all that damage to the bridge. That's kind of cool. But the bridge is already an indestructible creature, so how many blockers do you need who continue to not take damage? That's a tough question. And then if they remove your bridge, how useful is this guy? Maybe not as useful anymore. Still, it's a cool effect. I like a creature like this guy can spread out a lot of damage among all your different creatures. So if you go really wide and have a couple of guys who are halfway big, you can just keep spreading that damage out to the point that nobody's dying. That's cool. That is cool to be able to have that option, but I think you can probably just do a little bit more with your 1-drops these days in Pauper. Again, we were just talking about some of the 1-drops in White Weenie, the Inspectors and things like that, and I think all of those guys are just 1/2s, but they block a decent amount of the stuff that they need to block in the early game, better than this guy would. So, as cool as he is, I don't think this ends up being all that good of a card. I think I'm going to give this a 2.6. I'll bump it up to a 2.7. but I don't think this is a particularly great card. It's a neat one, though. Gimli's Axe is 2 and a red for an artifact equipment. It gives the equipped creature +3/+0, and as long as equipped creature is legendary, it has Menace, and it equips for 2. We're starting to see more and more and more legendary creatures in the Pauper format, so where this probably used to be pretty darn useless to have this equipment that just gives a +3 power bonus that you're paying 3 mana to get on the table and then another 2 mana to put on a creature. It also giving Menace to an Orokusaki or a Leonardo or a Spider-Man or, whatever. That's starting to make a little bit more sense. This still feels overcosted. I think 5 mana, again, 3 to put it on the table, 2 to put it on a creature. 5 mana is a lot to only get +3/+0 and Menace. Let's just say it gets and Menace because you're putting it on a legendary creature. I think that's still a lot of investment to put into a single card. It's going to slow you down quite a bit, and I just think you have so many better options. I would play so many of the flash speed, give you 2 power equipments that attach to a creature as soon as they come in. We were talking about this one on our last episode, but Inventor's Axe. Just look at Inventor's Axe. Like, that's single mana for +2, +0. No, you don't get the Menace anywhere, but you play this at flash speed, and when it enters, you attach it to a creature. So that's 1 mana for 2 power instead of 5 mana for 3 power. I just don't think the numbers help out Gimli's Axe here. So while it's cool and flavorful, that's that guy's axe. It's not particularly good in Pauper. I'm going to give this I think I'm actually going to give this like a 1.8. It's really bad. It is very cost prohibitive to the point where I don't think you want to play this at all. Desert Nomads. We have done Desert Nomads before, but man, what a cool looking card. What a cool looking card. Gift of Wrath from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's 3 and a red for an enchantment aura, enchanted creature, or artifact. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+2 and Menace. And when this aura leaves the battlefield, create a 2/2 red spirit creature token with Menace. That's kind of cool. It's another. It's been a while since we've talked about this, but how auras are kind of opening yourself up for a 2-for-1. That if your opponent removes your creature with the aura on it, that the aura also goes away, and that can feel like you've lost a lot of card advantage because you put all your eggs into kind of one basket, and then it all goes away at once. That's a real feel bad. But this at least says, hey, we're going to give your guy that power. And then if this does end up getting removed, and this is also just when the aura leaves the battlefield. So it could be somebody trying to destroy the aura or destroy the creature that the aura is attached to, and the aura goes away. But when it leaves the battlefield, you make that 2/2 spirit creature token with Menace, which is kind of cool. It reminds me a lot of the bestow mechanic. Because, or is it bestow? Yeah, it's bestow, right? The Nyxborn Hydra. Nyxborn Hydra. Yeah, bestow. So this comes in as an aura, and then when the creature it's attached to dies, this becomes a creature itself. So this is kind of like a reverse way of that happening, because now the card starts as one thing and then turns into the card goes away and then you get the token rather. But you know what I mean. Anyway, I think this is cool. I also like that this is a leaves the battlefield trigger, not a. I guess you couldn't say die, but like when it gets destroyed, you can do potentially blink or bounce shenanigans with this. You probably wouldn't want to though, because it's 4 whole mana. And I think that's kind of the real killer here, is that is 4 mana good enough, or is 4 mana worthy of this effect? Is this effect worth 4 mana to you? And I think the answer is no. I think +2/+2 in Menace is not incredible. even if you kind of get it a second time, I still think that investment is a little too much up front, and I just can't justify paying that. But I think there are potentially some cool things you can do. We've seen a lot of cards that say leaves the battlefield and have a trigger, and seen a lot of play. Cryogenic Relic being one of the latest ones that is just awesome for you to do blink and bounce stuff with. But that also costs 2 to play Cryogenic Relic, not 4. So that's kind of where the rub is. Let's go with a 3. I think I'm just going to go with a straight old 3 on that one. Next is Hoarding Recluse. Have we done this? Yes, we just recently did this one, in fact. So we will skip that one too. Man, we're getting a lot of dupes today. Dreadful as the Storm is 2 and a blue for an instant. Target creature has base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn, and the ring tempts you. Okay, I think this might be our first ring tempting us card. We've talked about these general effects. I'll talk more about the ring tempting you in a second, but we've talked about some of these blue effects that will kind of transmute your creature, or transmute any creature, rather. It does say target creature, not target creature you control. So turning a creature into a 5/5 is nice. This can go up against a Gurmag Angler or go up against a Tolarian Terror. You can turn your 1/1 token into a 5/5. If it's got +1/+1 counters on it, this just changes the base power and toughness. So you keep the power and toughness boosts of those 1/1 counters. Now you've got an even better thing that you can play around with. That's kind of cool. 3 mana is a lot for this kind of effect. That's having to keep up a lot of mana to make that work. But is the ring tempting you enough to make that worth it? If you ask me, and I'm going to ask you as the audience right now, what is the first thing that you get when the ring tempts you? There's 4, pretty sure. Pretty sure there are 4 effects when the ring tempts you over the course of 4 different times. And do you know what the first effect is? The ring tempts you, so you get to pick one of your creatures, and it's a ring bearer, and it gets that token, and then a thing happens. Let's see. All right, 4 things. I was right on that one. The first one is your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power, so it gets kind of like a skulk ability. There you go. Because they do go down. Yeah. So you start at the top. Second one here, whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw a card and then discard a card. Pretty good. Nice little loot effect on a repeatable loot effect that you get with your creature. And also, if your creature kind of has that skulk ability, maybe they're getting in for damage or not being able to be blocked, which is kind of nice. So you get that looting effect a little bit more often, a little bit more reliably, rather. Whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at the end of turn. That's starting to get a little spicy. And then whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life, which is, not insignificant. So you get the first step on this. Well, I mean, depending if you haven't had the ring tempt you before, that this would be your first step. So let's imagine you don't have any other ring tempting shenanigans or effects in your deck at this point. So this is the only one you've got, is having a creature become a 5/5 for a turn. And then either that creature or potentially another creature also get this first ring ability. Is that useful to you? So the kind of ironic part is that if you make the creature that becomes a 5/5 from this effect, if you make that your ring bearer, well, then the first ring bearer ability doesn't really help you out that much, because now it says your 5/5 can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. 5 power is pretty big. So yes, that only lasts for a turn. Maybe your 1/1 turns back into a 1/1 at the end of turn, and now he's still got this power on him. That's fine, I suppose. But I don't think this is the most amazing ability or a most amazing card to go with that first ability. We've seen plenty of much cheaper ring tempt you effects. Is it like what's the birthday one? Birthday escape. Yeah, just single mana, draw a card, and the ring tempts you. That's a little bit more interesting when it comes to a ring tempting you card. I like these general effects, these transmutation kind of effects, or transfigure effects, whatever you want to call them. But I don't think the ring tempting you is enough to justify the price tag on this, the mana cost price tag. Yeah, I just don't particularly love it. I'm going to give this thing a 2.9, I think. Final card of the day. It's Nezumi Link Breaker. It's a single black mana for a 1/1 Rat Warlock. When this creature dies, you create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap, and target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Another kind of doomed traveler or infestation sage. This gets used in a lot of mono black sacrifice decks. This is pretty darn solid, right? You've got your carrion feeders that are sacrifice outlets, so you can. This is kind of just 2 sacrifices because this all happens at instant speed. So your carrion feeder sacrifices this guy. This guy then ends up making that token. You can sacrifice the token, and now you get another couple +1/+1 counters on your carrion feeder. Not too bad. Or you give this guy the supernatural stamina or whatever the effect is that it does not dead after all, and this creature comes back into play, and then you can sacrifice it again and get another token. It's kind of cool. Mono Black Sack is a really interesting deck that I think people sleep on a little bit, but it's a pretty solid one. It's got a really strong game plan. And Link Breaker's a big reason why. You know, along with the Infestation Sage and a handful of other cards, Nested Shambler and things like that, it's these creatures that make other creatures when they die. And I don't really see people use the tap ability on the mercenaries all that often, but it's not a terrible ability. You know, you imagine you have that carrion feeder again, and you've already sacrificed the Link Breaker, so you've just had the mercenary. You didn't have to sacrifice the mercenary at one point. So now on your next turn, or on the turn, I guess you could do, well, it would have Summoning Sickness, right? Yeah, that's the reason why. But you untap with your mercenary token, and now that can give a power boost to your carrion feeder, and then your carrion feeder can sacrifice that token. And so it gets the +1/+0 from the token, and then it gets the +1/+1 counter from the ability. That's pretty cool. That's something that you don't get with the other Doom Traveler variants, and that's a neat little piece of gravy. Even if it doesn't come up a ton, it doesn't happen very often. It is still a nice little touch. So I quite like this card. I think it's pretty good. It really only goes in the one deck, but it's a good piece in the one deck. I'm going to give this thing a 6.3. And why don't we finish it off with one bonus card. It is Infantry Veteran, single white mana for a 1/1 human soldier. Tap it to give target attacking creature +1/+1 until end of turn. This is just a classic card we've seen all over the place from Visions originally. I think I have a 6th edition version of this guy, but I like this new art. It's pretty good new art. The old art's fine too, but it's not good. It's not very good. That's about it. That's honestly all I can say. This thing is not all that amazing. You know, weirdly enough, it's a little bit like that Nezumi Link Breaker, or at least the mercenary token. But this guy does work at instant speed, but also it's target attacking creature, which the mercenary token just gives it +1/+0 at sorcery speed. So, but it could be any creature. So you're not really doing that to block with, I guess. So what is really the difference? There's some edge cases, but generally there probably wouldn't be that much of a difference between those two things. It's still just not a particularly good card. There's so many good white 1-drops. You don't need to waste one on infantry veteran. You can play the Sacred Cat, or you can play the Inspectors, or you can play any of the one flyers that also have lifelink and things like that. You can just find much better cards than this. So kind of sad. Kind of sad. I'll give this thing a. I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. That's me being a little generous, I imagine, but I will give it a 2. Thanks so much for joining me on this one. We will catch you on the next one. See you then.